My name is Claire Thompson. I'm 22 years old, and the night it all began, I was gasping for air on the kitchen floor while my father stood there, arms crossed, calling me dramatic. My chest burned, my vision blurred, and my aunt's cruel laugh cut through the panic like a knife. That moment shattered every ounce of trust one had in the people I thought were supposed to protect me. And from that night forward, I knew something inside me would never be the same again. White right pointing backhand index before I share what happened next. Tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. It started with a tightness in my chest, the kind that sneaks up slowly until you realize you can't breathe properly. I had been standing at the kitchen counter, rinsing a plate, when the room tilted slightly. My heart began to hammer against my ribs, my throat tightened, and before I could make sense of it, my knees gave way. The sound of ceramic shattering filled the room as the plate slipped from my hands and broke on the tile. I remember clutching the edge of the counter, gasping, every breath shallow and ragged. My fingers dug into the wood so hard I thought they'd splinter. But instead of rushing toward me, my father stayed in his chair at the dining table, his arms folded, his face stone cold. "Stop the act, Claire," he said flatly, as if I were auditioning for a school play instead of fighting for oxygen. I tried to speak, but only a weak, wheezing sound escaped my throat. The panic rising in me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. My vision began to blur around the edges, a haze swallowing the room. I heard my aunt's voice next, sharp and mocking. "Always the drama queen," she sneered, her words dripping with disdain. "Anything for attention." It stung. More than the burning in my chest, more than the ache in my lungs, those words cut me open. Because I wanted nothing more than to be invisible at that moment, to simply breathe like a normal person. I collapsed fully onto the floor, my cheek pressed against the cool tile, the world around me spinning. I caught a glimpse of my younger brother standing at the doorway, his eyes wide and unsure. He took a step forward, but Dad's stern look froze him in place. "She'll get up when she's had enough of her performance," Dad muttered. My hands clawed at the floor as if I could pull air toward me. Each breath came in jagged gasps, my chest tightening with a vice-like grip. In my mind, I screamed for help, begged for someone, anyone, to see that this wasn't an act. But the silence was louder than my wheezing. Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, I forced myself upright, my body trembling, sweat clinging to my forehead. I leaned back against the cabinets, clutching my chest, my breath shallow but steadying. My father didn't move. My aunt raised her eyebrow, unimpressed. "See? She's fine," Dad said. "Fine." The word echoed in my head like a cruel joke. Nothing about me was fine. That night, when I finally staggered into my room and shut the door behind me, I sat on the edge of my bed, my body still shaking. The walls felt close, suffocating, like they were pressing in on me. My window was cracked open, and I gulped the cool night air like it was water after a drought. I thought about what had just happened, about how my father, the man who was supposed to protect me, looked at me like I was some nuisance, about how my aunt's laughter had been louder than my wheezing, about how my brother, too afraid to move, had become just another silent witness to my humiliation. I wanted to cry, but no tears came, only anger and fear. Later that night, as the house settled into its silence, I heard muffled voices drifting from the kitchen. My father's deep tone, sharp and dismissive, mixed with my aunt's high-pitched scoff. "She needs to grow up," Dad said, "always making something out of nothing." "She craves the spotlight," my aunt replied. "You give in to this nonsense. She'll never stop." My stomach churned. I pressed my pillow over my head, desperate to block out their words, but they had already carved themselves into my memory. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen to the sound of my aunt stirring sugar into her coffee. She didn't even look at me when she said, "Sleep well, drama queen." I froze, my jaw tight. My father smiled faintly, not even trying to hide it. It was in that moment I realized I was alone, truly alone. The people who should have cared most saw me as a burden, a liar, an inconvenience. I spent the rest of the day moving through the house like a ghost. Every step was heavy, every breath a reminder of how fragile I really was. I couldn't shake the image of myself on the kitchen floor, gasping, and the coldness in my father's eyes as he watched. That night, I sat at my desk with a notebook open in front of me. My handwriting trembled as I wrote, "If no one believes me, I have to find out for myself what's happening to me." It wasn't just about proving them wrong anymore. It was about survival. I didn't know it then, but that single collapse would become the first crack in the wall that held my family's illusions together. And once it split, nothing would ever be the same again. The night after I scribbled those shaky words into my notebook, the house seemed heavier than ever. It wasn't the kind of silence that brought peace. It was the kind that swallowed you whole. Every sound I made seemed amplified. The scrape of my chair against the floor at breakfast. The clink of my spoon in a bowl. Even the faint wheeze in my breath felt like it echoed through the walls. No one said a word. My father sat across from me, reading the paper with deliberate focus, his coffee steaming between us. My aunt scrolled on her phone, lips pursed like she was holding back some cruel remark. My brother pushed cereal around in his bowl, his eyes darting everywhere but at me. I wanted someone, anyone, to ask if I was okay. But the quiet pressed down harder than their words had the night before. At school, though, it was different. During gym class, halfway through running laps, I doubled over, clutching my chest. My best friend, Sarah, rushed to my side immediately. "Claire, you're pale. Are you okay?" she asked, her hand steady on my back. I wanted to cry right there because the concern in her voice was something I hadn't heard at home in what felt like forever. "I can't catch my breath," I whispered, embarrassed as a few other students slowed to watch. Coach Simmons came over, frowning. "Go sit down, Thompson. Take it easy." Sitting on the bleachers, water bottle trembling in my hands, I realized something. Strangers noticed my struggle before my own family did. And that realization was like swallowing glass. When I got home later, my aunt was in the kitchen chopping vegetables. She looked up at me, then down at the cutting board again. "You skipped gym again, didn't you?" she asked casually, though her tone was sharp. "I didn't skip," I muttered, dropping my backpack on the floor. I couldn't breathe. Her knife hit the board with a final, loud thud. She turned to face me, one eyebrow arched. "Convenient," she said, wiping her hands. "Always something wrong with you when responsibility shows up." I froze. The heat rose to my cheeks, not from guilt but from frustration. "You weren't there," I whispered, but my voice was drowned out by the faucet she turned on, like she'd washed my words away. Dinner that evening was more of the same. The clatter of silverware, the occasional scrape of a chair. My father didn't look at me once. When I finally tried to break the silence, my voice came out smaller than I meant it to. "Dad, what if something really is wrong with me?" His fork paused halfway to his mouth. He set it down carefully, like he was choosing patience over anger. Then he looked at me, his eyes cool. "What's wrong," he said, "is that you're obsessed with being sick. If you keep telling yourself you're broken, you'll never be anything else." The words sank deeper than I wanted to admit. I stared at my plate, appetite gone, while my aunt smiked into her napkin. After that, I stopped trying. I stopped speaking at the table. I stopped knocking on my dad's office door when the tightness in my chest kept me awake at night. Instead, I sat on my bedroom floor, hugging my knees, listening to the muffled hum of the television downstairs. That sound became my proof that life went on without me, even when I felt like I was disappearing. But silence has a way of speaking, even louder than words. I noticed it in small things. The way my brother hesitated before asking me to play video games. The way my father cleared his throat whenever I entered a room, like my presence was something to be endured. The way my aunt avoided my eyes altogether, unless she was throwing a jab. One Saturday afternoon, Sarah stopped by to drop off some notes I'd missed in class. She handed me the papers, then glanced around the living room. Your house is quiet, she said softly. I gave a hollow laugh. Yeah, always is. Her brow furrowed. Doesn't it drive you crazy? I didn't answer. I couldn't, because crazy didn't even begin to cover it. That night, lying awake, I realized I was beginning to hate the sound of my own breathing. Each wheeze reminded me I was still here, still fighting, still unheard. The silence of my family wasn't just absence. It was a verdict, a silent declaration that I wasn't worth listening to. And yet, that same silence carved something else into me. A stubbornness, a quiet determination that if they refused to hear me, I'd find someone who would. I started writing more in my notebook. Not just notes about my health, but about the way my dad's eyes flickered with irritation when I spoke, the way my aunt's laughter sharpened at my expense, the way my brother shrank back instead of standing with me. I wrote it all down, page after page, until the notebook became heavier than my backpack. At school, teachers started pulling me aside. You look tired. Are you eating enough? Claire, do you want to talk to someone? Their words, though well-meaning, only made the silence at home louder. Because outside, people noticed. Inside, nothing. One evening, I sat in the living room while my dad watched the news. My aunt scrolled her phone nearby. The weight in my chest returned, my breath shallow, but I forced myself to stay calm. Dad, I said softly, almost testing the word. He didn't look at me. Dad, I repeated, a little louder. Finally, he turned his head, his expression impatient. Yes, Clay. I opened my mouth, ready to tell him about the episodes at school, the pain, the fear. But his eyes, cold, waiting for me to waste his time, stopped me. I swallowed the words. Never mind, I whispered. He turned back to the TV. And that was it. The silence won again. But deep down, a flicker of something else lit in me. Because if no one inside these walls would hear me, maybe it was time to take my voice outside of them. The silence in my house became heavier after that night at the dinner table, when my aunt's mocking words seemed to stamp my struggles as nothing more than drama. But my body didn't care about her opinions, or my father's dismissive shrug. Each morning I woke up with a weight pressing on my chest, as if the air in my own room had turned against me. I began noticing the smallest things first. The climb up the stairs felt like I had just run a marathon. Walking down the street with friends left me embarrassed because I had to stop, pretend to tie my shoe, just to catch my breath. They gave me consigned looks, whispered among themselves, but none of them dared question me out loud. And at home, my family's silence built a wall so tall that even my gasps for air seemed to bounce right back into my chest. One cold morning in November, I almost collapsed on my way to school. The biting wind cut against my lungs, and halfway across the parking lot I had to lean against a car, clutching my chest like an old woman. My friend Jessica noticed. "Claire, are you okay?" she asked, her eyes widening. I forced a smile, even though my throat burned. "Yeah, just forgot to eat breakfast." She frowned. "That's not what forgetting breakfast looks like." Her words stung, because she was right. I was running out of excuses, but I didn't dare admit what I feared most, that something serious was happening inside me and no one at home was listening. That afternoon, I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My face was pale, lips tinged slightly blue. I pressed my palm against my ribcage and could almost hear the thud of my heartbeat racing against its own limits. I wanted to scream, to demand that my father take me to the hospital, but I already knew his response. "You're fine, Claire. You've always been dramatic." The words were etched in my memory like scars. So, I made a decision I never thought I would have to make at 16. I would go alone. The next day, while my dad thought I was staying late for a school project, I walked across town to a small clinic tucked between a laundromat and a coffee shop. My hands trembled as I pushed open the glass door, the faint smell of antiseptic mixing with brewed coffee from next door. The receptionist, an older woman with kind eyes, looked up. "Do you have an appointment?" Sweetheart. I shook my head. No, but I really need to see someone. Please. Something in my voice must have cracked, because she didn't press further. Within half an hour, I was sitting on the paper-covered exam table, staring at my sneakers as the doctor walked in. He introduced himself as Dr. Mayers, a tall man with gentle manners. So, Claire, tell me what's been going on. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Every dizzy spell, every moment of breathlessness, the chest pain, the way my own father brushed it aside. My voice shook as I admitted how scared I was. Dr. Mayers listened carefully, not interrupting once. Then he placed the stethoscope against my chest, his brow furrowing almost immediately. He had me breathe in, breathe out, over and over again, his silence growing heavier with each moment. When he finally spoke, his tone was serious but calm. Claire, I'm concerned. You may have a chronic respiratory condition. We'll need further tests, but your oxygen levels are lower than they should be. The room spun slightly around me. Chronic. That word echoed like a bell in my head. He explained terms I barely grasped: restricted airflow, treatment options, long-term care. All I could focus on was the realization that I wasn't crazy. My body really was failing me. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered, So, it's not just in my head. Dr. Mayers shook his head firmly. Not at all. And the sooner we manage it, the better. But Claire, does your family know? I hesitated, twisting my hands together. My dad doesn't believe me. He thinks I make things up. The doctor sighed, scribbling notes on his clipboard. Sometimes it's hard for people to accept what they can't see. But this is real. You'll need support. I nodded, though inside I knew support wasn't waiting for me at home. Walking back from the clinic, a folder of medical papers tucked in my backpack, I felt both relief and terror. Relief that my suffering had a name, that I wasn't imagining it. Terror because I now carried a truth too heavy to share with a family who would only twist it into weakness. That evening, as my dad sat in his recliner watching TV, I hovered in the doorway. I thought about pulling out the papers, showing him the doctor's notes, proving once and for all that I wasn't lying. But then I remembered the way he had laughed the last time, dismissing my breathless gasps as acting. The sting of that memory burned hotter than my lungs ever had. So I turned, climbed the stairs quietly, and tucked the folder deep inside my desk drawer, beneath old notebooks and school essays. It would stay there, hidden like a secret weapon, until the time came when truth would be undeniable. Over the following weeks, I carried my diagnosis like a shadow. At school, I learned to pace myself, to sit out during gym, pretending I had a sprained ankle rather than admitting the real reason. Friends gave me curious looks, but I brushed them off with practiced smiles. At home, nothing changed. My dad remained blind. My aunt continued her little jabs when she visited, and the silence of the family wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket. But inside, something had shifted. I knew the truth now, and that truth gave me a strange kind of power. Each time my father dismissed me, each time my aunt's words cut, I no longer doubted myself. They were wrong. I had proof. And while they continued digging their hole of disbelief deeper, I was quietly gathering strength, waiting for the moment when the silence would break wide open. Because I knew it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. The folder with my diagnosis remained buried in my desk drawer, untouched but never forgotten. It was like a quiet secret pulsing in the back of my mind, reminding me that even if no one in my family believed me, I carried proof stronger than their laughter. At first, I thought hiding it would crush me, but in time, I realized it gave me an edge. They thought I was weak, fragile, dramatic, yet I had knowledge they didn't. That quiet power began to change me. Winter rolled in, and with it came more responsibilities at home. My dad had been laid off from his job at the hardware store, a detail he announced one evening in the same dismissive tone he used whenever I spoke about my health. "It's just temporary," he muttered, dropping his jacket on the couch. "They're cutting staff. I'll find something else soon." But days turned into weeks, and the weight of bills started pressing down on the house. For once, it wasn't me struggling for breath, it was him. The fridge grew emptier, the heat was turned down to save money, and his usual confidence cracked around the edges. That was when the irony began to settle in. The same man who once ignored my wheezing gasps now depended on me to pick up extra shifts at the diner. "Claire, you're young. You can handle it," he said, almost carelessly, when I mentioned how exhausted I was after a double shift. I swallowed the words I wanted to throw back. You didn't believe I could handle a simple flight of stairs just months ago. Instead, I nodded and clocked in again the next day, silently watching the balance of power tilt ever so slightly. At the diner, I became sharper, stronger. The long hours pushed my lungs to their limit. But oddly, they also built my endurance. Between refilling coffee cups and memorizing orders, I started saving. Little by little, my tips turned into something tangible, a small savings account with my name on it. Meanwhile, at home, my father avoided my aunt's calls. I overheard snippets when her voice boomed through his phone, mocking him for losing his job. The same woman who once laughed at me was now turning her scorn on him. I watched his shoulders tense, his answers grow shorter. It was like watching a mirror version of my own humiliation. But this time, I wasn't the one shrinking under her words. One evening, after a particularly long shift, I walked into the living room to find my dad staring at an overdue electric bill. His hands trembled slightly, though he tried to hide it when I entered. "You need help?" I asked quietly. He looked up, pride flickering in his eyes before he quickly shook his head. "I'll figure it out." But I could see the truth in the stack of unopened envelopes. For once, he was drowning, not me. I slipped away, opened my desk drawer, and looked at the folder. Not the diagnosis papers this time, but the small ledger where I kept track of my tips. Numbers didn't lie, just like medical charts didn't. And both had become my quiet weapons. The real time came one Sunday when my aunt showed up unannounced. She breezed into the house, arms crossed, lips pursed, ready to throw her usual barbs. "Well, isn't this cozy?" she said, glancing at the stack of bills on the counter. "Looks like this family can't keep it together." My dad clenched his jaw but stayed silent. Normally, this was the moment when he would let her words echo, leaving me to bear the shame. But this time, I couldn't stay quiet. "Funny," I said, my voice calm but firm, "because despite what you think, I'm the one keeping this house running right now." Her eyes snapped toward me, narrowing. "You? Please. You can't even walk up the stairs without..." "Without what?" I cut in, stepping closer. "Without breathing hard. Without being dramatic. You have no idea, do you? I've been paying bills while you sit there judging. I'm the reason those lights are still on." For a moment, the room froze. My dad shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't speak. My aunt's face reddened, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for a comeback. That silence, the same silence that once suffocated me, was suddenly hers. From that day, the shift was undeniable. My father, though too stubborn to admit it outright, began relying on me in ways I had never imagined. I balanced shifts, managed grocery lists, and even started handling some of the payments. The girl they once mocked had become the backbone of the house. But it wasn't just about money. It was about control. For the first time, when my aunt visited, her sharp remarks fell flat. She could no longer point at me as the weak link, because the truth was, I had become the strongest. At night, lying in bed, I would think back to the doctor's words, to the hidden diagnosis still tucked away in that drawer. I hadn't revealed it yet, but I didn't need to, not yet. Watching my father silently lean on me was enough. His reliance was its own form of confession, and in that quiet, I finally understood. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. The tables had turned, and I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was leading. Every decision I made, every bill I paid, every breath I fought for, shifted the balance further in my favor. The same house that once echoed with laughter at my expense now depended on me to keep it standing. And I wasn't done yet. The phone rang just as I was rinsing a glass in the sink, the clatter of water masking the shrill tone for a second. When I picked it up, my brother's voice was tight, almost panicked. "Claire, it's Dad. He collapsed." For a moment, the world tilted sideways. My chest clenched, but not from my illness. This was something else entirely. I grabbed my coat and keys without another thought. The hospital was 10 minutes away, but the drive felt like an hour, the headlights stretching across wet pavement, my pulse drumming louder than the engine. When I stepped into the emergency ward, the fluorescent light stung my eyes. The air smelled of antiseptic and something heavier, fear, sweat, waiting. My aunt was already there, her arms folded, face pale and drawn. She didn't even look at me at first, but when she did, her lips pressed into that same sharp line I'd known all my life. "He's asking for you," she said stiffly. I froze. For me? The daughter who, in his words, exaggerated, dramatized, sought attention? I walked toward the curtained bay, my shoes tapping against the linoleum. Inside, my father lay propped against crisp hospital pillows, his skin the color of paper. Tubes, wires, machines. I had never seen him look so small. His eyes opened when he heard me. "Claire!" His voice cracked. "I need you." Something twisted deep inside me. For years, I had needed him. Needed him to believe me, to see me, to stand between me and the cruel silence of this family. But he never had. Now he was the one reaching out, and I was the only one who could hear him. The doctor entered moments later, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Hayes," he said firmly, "your heart is under severe strain. You'll need strict care. No stress, no overexertion. And most importantly, you'll need someone dependable by your side." My father turned his eyes toward me again, pleading. The irony was so sharp it nearly cut me open. I swallowed hard. "Doctor," I said before he could go on, "what happens if he doesn't follow instructions?" The doctor glanced at me, then at Dad. The consequences could be fatal. The word hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. I saw my father's hand twitch on the blanket, trembling. He was scared, terrified. The invincible man who had dismissed my breathless nights as theatrics was suddenly fragile, breakable, human. I pulled the chair closer, my body sinking into it as if preparing for battle. My aunt hovered at the edge of the room, her jaw tight. "Dad," I said quietly, "do you remember last winter? When I collapsed in the kitchen? When you told everyone I was fine? Just dramatic." He blinked, confused. "Claire, that's not." I leaned forward, my voice sharp. "Or the night I couldn't breathe, and you accused me of faking it? You told me to stop making a scene." Silence. The monitors beeped steadily, filling the space his words couldn't. I took a slow breath, my chest rising, steady now, stronger than I had been before. Well, I wasn't faking. I wasn't exaggerating. I've been living with a chronic condition. A doctor diagnosed me months ago. Every time you doubted me, you made me feel smaller, weaker, invisible. The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. From the corner, my aunt scoffed lightly, as though to brush the moment away. "Claire, really? Do we need this right now? He's sick. Don't make it about you." Something inside me snapped. Years of swallowed words, of quiet tears behind closed doors, of being told I was too much came crashing to the surface. I turned to her, my voice steady, sharp as glass. "You told me once that my breathlessness was just an excuse for laziness. Do you have any idea how many nights I cried myself to sleep after that? How many mornings I woke up afraid my lungs would give out before anyone believed me?" Her lips parted, but no words followed. For once, she was silent. I looked back at my father. His eyes were wet now, blinking hard. He tried to reach for my hand, but I held still. Do you know what it feels like? I whispered. To beg for air while your own family tells you you're imagining it? To have strangers show more concern than the people who raised you? The room felt electric, charged with everything that had never been said. For the first time, he didn't argue. He didn't dismiss me. He simply sat there, a man stripped of all his defenses. Claire, his voice cracked again. I was wrong. The words I had needed for years. Yet, instead of relief, I felt an odd calm. Like the power had shifted, permanently. I stood slowly, my chair scraping back. You were wrong, Dad. And now you see what it feels like when your body betrays you, when you need someone to believe you. His tears spilled then, rolling down the lines of his face. My aunt turned away, ashamed, or perhaps just unwilling to witness what she could no longer deny. I placed my coat back over my arm, my breath steady, deliberate. I'll help you, I said finally, but on my terms. Not because you dismissed me into silence, but because I won't be the kind of person you were to me. His eyes closed, but the tears didn't stop. Walking out of that room, I felt taller, stronger. For years, they had reduced me to nothing, but in that single moment, the truth had rebuilt me. The revelation wasn't just that I had been right, it was that I had survived their disbelief and come out whole. And now, for the first time in my life, the silence belonged to them, not me.